Far out, 3 months has felt like a lifetime. But that is how long I've spent with the Canon EOS R, so I feel like it's now my turn to put my video out on YouTube just with the thousands of others on what I think of this camera after 3 months of use and sort of, whether or not you should pick one up. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So like I said, we're talking about the Canon EOS R, and before I go through all my pros and cons on this camera and using it as a hybrid system, so for stills and video, I do want to preface it by saying that I purchased it with my own money. All the cameras I've reviewed on this channel I purchased with my own money, and the reason I swap between systems constantly is just so that I can not only try new systems out, but also try to find what fits my workflow the best, because everyone's needs are slightly different and everyone sort of compromises on different things. With that out of the way, the Canon EOS R has been my main shooter now since probably the start of March. So through the whole isolation situation, which I didn't really shoot that much, but coming out of it, I've shot a lot of landscapes with it, and recently quite a few portraits as well. If you follow me on Instagram, which you really should, so, follow me on Instagram. Pretty much all the most recent photos have been taken with the Canon EOS R, and I've gotten to know it really well as a stills camera and also as a video camera shooting YouTube videos. Not that I do super technical video work with it anyway. So before I go through my pros and cons, so just quick history of the cameras I use. When I started the YouTube channel, I was shooting with like a Panasonic G7, then to like a Canon 77D, but I never really used those for like photography, just sort of shooting YouTube videos. And then from there I went to the Sony A7 III, and that's when I started doing photography. Used the Sony A7 III for like a year, absolutely loved that camera. Moved from that to the Nikon Z6. Actually, there was like a little sort of flirtatious period in between there where I used the Fuji X-T3, but it just wasn't for me. And then Nikon Z6, which is the camera I've been using for the better part of the past year. And I loved that camera. The biggest issue I had with that camera was sort of the lens selection. I found with what I started shooting is that I really wanted like the 16 to 35 range. I wanted something wider than 24 for landscapes because that's what I primarily shot. And I wanted something, and 35 seemed to be perfect for the sort of portraits that I would shoot. And now that I've started posting more portraits, I found that 35mm is definitely my favorite focal length for portraits, at least for now, who knows. And so the lens selection with the Nikon Z6 just sort of started to throw me a bit, and I wanted to branch out. Also, after shooting with those two cameras, which have those like tilty screens at the back, shooting YouTube videos just started to get really annoying, not being able to see myself. Obviously, the Canon EOS R, as we'll just quickly show you here, has that cool little flip out LCD, which really helps with shooting videos like this. And that's pretty much one of the main reasons I wanted to pick it up, is because I felt that that would really improve my workflow. And stills wise, I felt like they're all going to be pretty similar. The lens selection on the Canon, however, seemed to be a lot better than the Nikon Z6. I did start shooting off with this, which is the 16 to 35 f4 with the control ring adapter. Seemed good, but then I shot some portraits with it. F4 is just not enough. I want, f2.8 would be great. So I picked up the 15 to 35 lens, and I can see why people shout its praises. It's absolutely incredible. 15mm is great for all the landscapes I shoot, and 35mm is absolutely perfect for portraits, at least the portraits that I shoot. There you go. That's what I've been using. Canon EOS R, 15 to 35. Before that, 16 to 35 f4. And I really do enjoy using this camera. It's not my favorite camera to use because some of the issues that I have with it just really make shooting with it a bit of a pain. Number one, and the foremost issue I have with this camera, is the frames per second. It shoots at 5 frames a second continuous when you're taking photos, and that's just not fast enough for the way I shoot. I'm a pretty trigger happy shooter, especially when I'm doing portraits. I like to get those action shots with the hair swishes and all that sort of stuff. And 5 frames a second, like, I'm just missing the shot. Like, I was shooting with a friend for her graduation, and we're trying to get this, like, her graduation cap to sort of enter the frame and sort of freeze, like, around here, and we're trying to capture that motion. And we got the shot, here it is, and super pumped on it, but boy, did it take a long time. 5 frames a second was just not fast enough to capture that sort of action, and it was such a pain to try and shoot. Whereas the Nikon Z6 and the Sony A7 III shot, I think, like 12 frames a second, much faster anyway. And like I said, for the way I shoot portraits, that's sort of what I wanted. That's my biggest gripe with the Canon EOS R. Now, the R6 and the R5, which are coming out in a few weeks, or getting announced at least, seem to have improved that. They are 12 frames a second and 20 frames a second if you go electronic shutter, which that could be a game changer. That could be exactly what I need. Other than that, the other issues I have with this camera are very minor. The touch bar, control multifunction bar, whatever Canon calls it on the back, I don't use it. I don't see many other people using it. I wish there was just a joystick, because I do use that when using single point autofocus, but you can configure the touchscreen to sort of do that anyway. So again, not a real issue, just like a bit of the camera that I just don't use. Swapping between photo and video as a hybrid shooter, it's a bitch on this camera. You gotta hit mode, info, select. It's just Nikon Z6, it's just a little switch. Real easy. Sony A7 III, a little dial on the top. This camera is just an absolute pain to shoot. Other small things as well, the on button being on the left side of the camera, I don't know why that bothers me so much, but I guess the Nikon Z6 and the Sony A7 III, it was all on your right hand, so generally a one-handed shooter, so I'm able to turn the camera on and off with my index finger. Not with this one. I gotta switch it on and then grab it. It's such small things. And I guess the last con I have with this camera is the low light capabilities. It's not bad by any means, but because it's a higher megapixel count sensor, 35 megapixels versus 24 or whatever with those other cameras, it's just not as good in low light. So I'm getting a lot more noise in my images. I find I can't push the ISO as much without introducing noise. And it doesn't help that it's an older sensor, it's the same sensor in the 5D Mark IV. So this is to be sort of expected, maybe going to be remedied with the new cameras that are coming out. And yet with all these cons, I say all these, is not that much, but having that flip out screen, which just makes the video shooting experience much better for me, that is the one redeeming feature of the camera that just makes it the perfect pick for what I do. Those other things I can work around. The frames per second thing, if the R6 and R5 can't get announced and they're just that's what they shoot, I'll probably just sell this and pick one of them up. Everything else about this camera, the small things that I don't like, they're just small things I don't like. Every camera is going to have them. Every camera has its pros and cons. The flip out screen, Canon's pretty much the only one in the game doing it. Obviously the Fuji's just coming out with it. And you got the Panasonic S1H, which is just super expensive. This just, makes video shooting much easier for me, being able to frame myself. And the photo experience is really good. I find the autofocus in the EOS R is better than the Z6. It's not as good as the Sony A7 III. And on photo shoots, sometimes I find myself switching to manual focus just because it's a bit easier and I don't have to sort of rely on the autofocus. But for video, I think the video autofocusing is incredible. And autofocus can always get better with software. So 3 months in, I'm really enjoying the camera. Shooting videos made my life much, much easier. It's been super fun to shoot photos. Obviously I have a few gripes, but other than that, I've really enjoyed using this camera. If you want to check it out, there's a link down below. Fingers crossed that the R6 and R5 are as good as Canon Rumors is announcing, because they pretty much address all the issues I have with this camera. So, fingers crossed. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. And until the next one, see ya.